Hi everybody, it's Dr. E and I just wanted to walk you through what I'm asking you to do this week in the general and paper topic discussion areas. So I'm going to go straight to D2L so you can see what that looks like today. You'll notice first that there's some corrections for the syllabus addendum. A big thanks to Leslie for identifying those date inaccuracies. I've updated those and the documents are here in either Word format or in PDF format, whichever is going to be easier on the device that you're using. There are a couple ways that you can get to our discussion areas or what I'm asking you to do every week. So the first is the calendar on the right-hand side. Okay, just as a general reminder, this is going to show the due date and time that the discussion area is closed. That doesn't necessarily indicate the due dates, right? So even though it says April 25th at 11:59 p.m. for the general discussion, that's actually going to be due every Wednesday by 11:59 p.m., but it will stay open a certain amount after that just so that you can see other people, share their ideas, and sometimes you're asked to respond to other people's ideas. So I would ignore these dates. Those are not the deadlines. Those are just when those discussions close. For something more accurate, please take a look at the syllabus addendum, but you can also go to the content area. Remember in the overview, that's where the syllabus addendum is located. We have the rubric for the online discussions. There's also information on the multimedia project, and then I've offered that video that offers some insights and examples of the multimedia project, just because I would really like for you to start thinking about what you might be interested in doing and what texts you would like to examine. Okay, so in that content area, we're in the overview, but I want to take a look at generally the table of contents, and we already have information there for week 15, right? So here's the general discussion. So I wanted to just address what I'm asking you to do. Since we're getting back into Sanchez's text, right, I'm not your perfect Mexican daughter, I want you to just, in one paragraph, a brief 4 to 5 sentences, summarize those chapters that we read this week. So that's going to have to be really brief because we read a number of chapters, right? But in the second paragraph of 4 to 5 sentences, I want you to really think about, what is happening with the main character? How is the main character developing, right? We're seeing some changes, but I also want you to think about the fact that she is not, as a first-person narrator, always going to be the most reliable. As folks in a literature class, we really want to examine how trustworthy our narrators are, and typically in literary studies, first-person narrators we think of as being kind of troubling because they're flawed, right? These are flawed characters. And just like if I asked you to write your autobiography, you would likely pick and choose things and situations and memories that didn't put you. I'm walking around. Hi everyone, it's Dr. E and I just wanted to walk you through what I'm asking you to do this week in terms of our general discussion post and then also our paper topic discussion post. So I'm going to just take us right into D2L to see what that looks like right now. You'll notice that the first announcement is about the syllabus addendum and that there have been some corrected dates. So a big thank you to Leslie for recognizing that the dates were a little off for when your multimedia project is due. That's all been updated. That is not going to be due until, our finals week. I'm doing the air quotes, the finals week, the very last week that our class meets online. But you can take a look at that updated information. It's either in Word format or PDF format, whichever is easiest for you on the device that you're using. So remember that in order to get to our discussion area, there are a couple of ways that you can get there. One is looking over here at the right-hand side, which is the calendar, and just clicking one of those links. I do want to make a quick note here that the dates that you see in the calendar are only reflecting when the discussion closes, right? That does not necessarily recognize the due date. So our general discussions are always going to be due at 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday. And then the paper topic, the more intensive response, is always going to be due at 11:59 p.m. on Friday. So these dates are just reflective of when the discussion will close, and then no additional posts can be made. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, we can also go to the content area. And so in the content area, I want to remind you that over here, if you click overview, that's where just our general information is. So we have the syllabus addendum that's been updated. There's also the rubric for the online discussions, so that you can kind of review and make sure that you're doing everything you need to do to get the best possible grade or whatever grade that you're aiming for. And then there's also the guidelines for the multimedia project, and then a video where I kind of walk through and offer some insights about that project, what's expected, but also show you some examples, right? So it can kind of become more clear, you know, what others have done, and maybe you start to think about what you can do. It would be great if you started making some of those decisions now so that it just doesn't creep up on you. It does end up being a bit more time intensive than people originally think, just because it's pushing you outside of just the you know, writing a paper or writing a discussion post. It's asking you to be creative. So something to keep in mind. So if we're in the overview section, I want us to go down to the table of contents, right? So you can either click table of contents or click the specific week, right? So in this week's discussion, we're getting into Sanchez's text again, right? It's been a while since we talked about her text. I am not your perfect I am not your perfect Mexican daughter. Sorry, I've been having a lot of video time today. So in this general discussion that's due on Wednesday, I want you to do a couple of things, right? So the first is a paragraph, 4 to 5 sentences that's just summary, right? And that's asking a lot, because in 4 to 5 sentences, you're going to be breaking down a lot of information, right? But just, you know, kind of show that you've read and give a sense of what's going on so far. Then I want another paragraph of 4 to 5 sentences, and I really want you to think about our main character, right? So part of literature classes and literary analysis is looking at character development and what authors are doing to show that development with the character. So I want you to remember that we're dealing with a first-person narrator, right? We're seeing a lot of the I, you know, we're getting her perspective. And I want you to think about the fact that that means we are getting a flawed view of a flawed character, right? So I've asked you to kind of think about, if you were asked to write your own autobiography, you would have to pick and choose what to share, right? You can't write an autobiography about every single thing, every single moment, right? It would be thousands and thousands of pages long. So we have to, if we're writing about ourselves, make some choices. Oftentimes, we're going to choose to share information that brings out the best in us and makes us look, you know, like good human beings. We're less often going to really dig into those bad choices that we've made. That time I was really irresponsible. That time, you know, I said this regrettable thing. You know, sometimes we will share that because it shows growth, right? But we want to look at our main character in that light, right? She's picking and choosing what to share. She's picking and choosing how she's presenting these other characters, right? Of course, this is all a creation of Sanchez as our author. She is choosing to make these choices from our main character's perspective, right? So I want you to really look at her, the main character. What's going on with her, right? How is she developing in your mind? You know, and also think about, you know, why are we reading some of these things? Why is Sanchez choosing, you know, to share some of these things from our narrator's perspective? Okay. And then in the last paragraph for the Wednesday discussion, I want you to pick another character, right? So we've thought about the main character. We're going to be thinking a lot about her as we move forward because she's just central to our discussions into the text. But how is Sanchez creating these other characters? So, you know, Sanchez is creating characters using particular language and giving us a particular impression, right, about these about these characters. And if you need something to add a little bit more, just click on this link right here where it says, you know, it's a hyperlink for Characterize. And that will take you to the Purdue Online Writing Lab's website, which I hope you're using whenever you need writing assistance, especially if it's MLA or APA formatted. But there's a list of literary terminology here that can be really useful in applying towards how we're thinking about literature. So the first entry here is for characterization, okay? So if you had questions about what I meant when I said characterization, Purdue notes that characterization is the ways individual characters are represented by the narrator or author of the text, right? This includes description of the character's physical appearances, personalities, actions, interactions, and dialogue. So a lot of choices being made by the author to create this character. Okay, so I really want that to be on your mind in that section of the discussion post. Okay, all right, so for the paper topic, that's going to be due on Friday, right? So what I want you to do is really continue thinking about Anzaldua's text and Moraga's text and think about them as research. So because of the state of things, I just can't, in good faith, good conscience, I can't ask you to go out and find all these sources and write a paper and do all of these kinds of things without us being together to talk through that process. So I'd really like you to think about Anzaldúa and Moraga's texts as the theory, as the research, because they're talking about Mexican-American identity. They're talking about identity as, you know, this jumping off point for all these other discussions. You know, Moraga's digging into, you know, what colorism is and what it means to be somebody who has more privilege than others because her skin is so fair, right? And Anzaldúa is really working to create what we now understand as border theory, right? So what does it mean to be physically, geographically located on a border, but also in terms of borders of identity, right? Because Anzaldúa, at least as a woman, as a Chicana, as a lesbian identified, right? So she was working with a lot of different borders and she developed a lot of theory based on that. So we want to take those works and apply them, use them in what we're reading, okay? So you'll notice here, I want you to think about the connections that you're seeing with what we've read so far in Sanchez's text, right? So use quotes, right? I want you to think about, you know, we're writing a research paper here in discussion posts. So I want you to use quotes from Moraga or Anzaldúa. You only have to choose one. And then pull quotes from Sanchez's text to also support your ideas. So sometimes with research, I have a tendency to inadvertently confuse students, and I don't want that to happen. When you are writing research about literature, your main focus is analyzing what we're reading. So you're analyzing Sanchez's text and just bringing in Moraga or Anzaldúa to help support your own ideas, okay? So for research, we really want to use research ethically, right? And give credit to whoever's ideas we're using, whether it's Anzaldúa, Moraga, you know. So when we use quotes or paraphrase information, we want to make sure we're introducing them. You know, you're saying in Anzaldúa's text, she notes da 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 da, and then you offer an explanation. Don't just drop quotes into a paragraph and not explain them and not give any indication as to why they're important, okay? So in 2 paragraphs of 6 to 7 sentences each, I want you to pick a situation, a character, a development in the story. You can choose anything you want so far in Sanchez's text, right? But I want you to analyze it, not summarize. Don't tell us what happens, we know, but work to really dig more deeply, like why is Sanchez doing this? What is happening? And bring in Anzaldúa or Moraga to support your ideas, right? How is the main character's identity developing? Is she connecting to ideas of border identity, border theory, or talking about, you know, issues related to racial identity? You know, you can be your own literary critic here, and that's what I'm saying. You are a literary critic. So I want you to think from that perspective and think of film critics, right? They don't just summarize films, they're thinking about all the different, you know, things that are important, you know, lighting, costumes, acting. So I want you to pick, you know, your particular lens through which you're going to examine this text and then use Anzaldúa and Moraga to support your ideas, okay? There's also a link here, you know, and it's adding a bit more to our thinking about terminology and how to apply that terminology. So if you go to that link, it's going to take you to this website here that just talks a little bit more about analysis of literature and what questions to ask. And then there's also vocabulary here. So we have characterization. Again, it's very common in literary studies to utilize this list, right? And the list offered on the Purdue OWL's website, okay? So that's really what I'm looking from you to this week, right? We're just kind of slowly taking research bit by bit every week instead of having one, you know, big paper that's due. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to post in the Q&A section of D2L. You can always email me, but if you have that question, chances are other folks are going to as well. So please share there, and I'll work to answer and address any questions or issues that you have. I hope you're all doing well and staying safe, and let me know how you are doing when you get a chance. Okay, bye.